Okay, everyone, real quick, I just wanted to point out for a second, I do have a Patreon. There are a couple other places, but the Patreon is probably more well known, and you probably already have an account for it. You can go support me there, and then if you like the things that I do, that's a great way, if you have the means, to support the content that I make and make it easier for me to focus more on it. Anyway, back into whatever we're doing. So as it stands, here we go again. Let's see. Follow up on the massive PC Tattletale hack. I guess I should have rolled it in with that one, but anyway. When you search PC Tattletale in U.S. court systems, just one case comes up. U.S. versus Patel. 3-year-long scheme in which Patel and his accomplices defrauded a large U.S. hotel chain. Pretending to be IT admins, they called hotel front desks, convince them to give them remote access, grab sensitive information, blah, blah, blah. Deigel discovered a bug in PC Tattletale last week that let him access arbitrary victim screen recordings. One of the first things he and Zach Whitaker discovered was a number of check-in computers at Wyndham hotel locations. Again, payment info and things like that. No specific comment. Wyndham is a franchise organization, meaning all hotels in the U.S. are independently owned and operated. While we guess the software might have been used for employee tracking, Booking.com instead told TechCrunch that some of our accommodation partners have unfortunately been targeted by very convincing and sophisticated phishing tactics. Phishing is a problem across a lot of different places, including for some volunteer situations where they may have slightly more privileged access. So, yeah, in a hotel chain like this, it makes sense. So when PC Tattletale got completely breached and all their data dumped online, and as we finished up our initial reporting, Zach and Eric and I were still wondering about one thing. Is it possible that all the affected Wyndham computers are actually being spied on by hackers rather than by employee monitoring admins? Let's see, digging into the leaked database, financiers, number of patterns that reminded me of the Patel case. All 9 different PC Tattletale accounts spying on Wyndham hotels are just linked to random Gmail address, and most of the device descriptions in the database are just a combination of the hotel brand and location, such as Super A Evansville or Days Inn Amarillo. So yeah, they are basically just spying on hotels and exfiltrating data. So you can see desktop names and things like that. Let's see. Desktop Travel Lodge. I still wasn't entirely convinced this was fraud. However, I still started seeing device descriptions that began straight up copying reviews of the hotel location, or were just super short. I guess other descriptions explicitly talk about credentials, access that are still missing, including needed security questions. They were using them as notes. All in all, about 270 computers at Wyndham locations had it installed at some point, some of them going back to 2022, most spying seemingly going unnoticed until this data leaked. The OSINT analysis of email addresses shows that most of them were not connected to any other accounts, acting as burners though one of the emails, which monitors 41 of the devices and locations across the U.S., seemingly belongs to the general manager of the single Wyndham hotel location. It's impossible to conclusively say whether any of this is actually the case of Wyndham getting defrauded or not. It's especially impossible to let's see. PC Tattletale is mostly being used here would make little sense for internal company use. Spying is indeed being conducted by malicious users. That's the fingerprint that you have based on the email addresses. It serves as a pretty bad testament for Wyndham's cybersecurity practices. This is the thing. It's things like this, you're not keeping track of anything, despite the corporation likely having little visibility. Individual franchise computer systems absolutely shouldn't take over, despite the corporation likely having little visibility on the individual franchise computer systems. 270 affected devices and a journalist's inquiry for them to detect an intrusion of this scale. It's especially bad look for a 2015 FTC settlement regarding unrelated data breaches ordered them to establish proper cybersecurity procedures in order to protect personal and payment data. I reached out to Wyndham for comment, but have yet to receive a response at time of publishing. If we allow for commercial spyware to be this easily accessible, people are going to use it for crime. As a matter of fact, I'd imagine this is the only tip of the iceberg. Yeah, of course it is. So this is IT housekeeping not being done properly. And so here we are dealing with the aftermath of people not doing their proper due diligence. And it's kind of sad. Okay, so now we need to talk about Israel, apparently. This data is the data that this reporting is based on is now available via DDoS secrets for secondary reporting. Journalists interested in quotes, blah, blah, blah. Most stalkerware reporting focuses on private use by abusers, stalkers, or parents, and makes sense. Besides monitoring employees, those tend to be the main people stalkerware companies advertise to. And the ever-increasing normalization of surveillance is an important social issue to shed light on. It's always been clear, at least in theory, that this hyper-availability of relatively cheap commercial spyware also enables completely different use cases. Fraud schemes, governments, during every stalkerware leak I've analyzed so far, I've always been on the lookout for the latter. In a lot of my articles, I report on government employees I've found in the databases. So far, it's always been for either private or unclear use. With a complete dump of mSpy help desk a week ago, this all changes. Dump is massively over 150 gigabytes of plaintext files, made up of over 5 million tickets, but 2.5 million users. Let's see. The Ukrainian company behind mSpy, which is by far their biggest venture and one of the biggest. So why is it that, like, we get another... So, operated by BrainStack. Other devices include at least 2 other stalkerware brands which market to slightly different audiences. One of them focuses entirely on infidelity, as well as some of the largest phone number localization services, and weight loss app called Lasta. All these services, including mSpy, function with the same kind of predatory subscription scheme, luring you in with free trials that auto-renew as horrendly expensive monthly or yearly subscriptions. Canceling the service requires reaching out to support. Users are typically unable to avoid overrunning the trial. Trying to convince support to issue a refund practically requires you to roll a nat 20 in charisma. See, why is it that it's Ukraine that is again being used as a money laundering place? You've got like different like scummy thing, like different hidden things going on in Ukraine, and we've got to protect Ukraine and different things like that. Every country is interested in providing things to Ukraine. It's like, what does Ukraine have that is so special? Other than the fact that they are where everybody goes for like big money deals, apparently. Let's see. Been CC'd or mentioned in any support email, including tons of spammers. Their pattern of horrible communication also extends into most other areas in the help desk, including how they respond to subpoenas. Their initial response to these legal inquiries usually just reiterates their terms of service assertion within legal bounds. Sometimes even after being served a court-signed subpoena, mSpy representatives demand more and more evidence. Let's see. Often they instead resort to just closing tickets, with some legal request emails being manually closed with no response at all. Subpoenas come from all around the world and are typically for cases of stalking or harassment, but sometimes even for heavier charges, including attempted murder. Common theme for these types of easily accessible tracking tools. Law enforcement officers, however, don't just reach out to mSpy for legal aid. A lot of them also privately use stalkerware to spy on their own children or spouses. Notably, regional police chief in Switzerland and an ICE enforcement and removal operations officer. Other government workers who at one point use mSpy are 11th Circuit U.S. Court of Appeals, Australian, then Parliament, then member of Recep Erdogan's presidential staff, 2 diplomats representing France and Germany. While that's already a pretty wild lineup, that only covers the private use of stalkerware, because stalkerware providers offer fairly robust spyware solutions for far cheaper than ones marketed for governments and with far fewer legal hurdles in their gray area operation. always inevitable that governments would eventually come knocking to the scene. First instance I found of this was 2014. CTO of the National Cyber Unit of the Israeli Federal Police reached out to mSpy in 2014 to attempt to buy a version of their software that the police could deploy on their own infrastructure. Later in 2016, Swiss National reached out to mSpy as COO, now defunct Israeli private security and intelligence company that was also looking to white label the software for use by various governments, presumably including the Israeli Ministry of Defense. Over the years, dozens of other private intelligence companies working with governments, even local police departments, have also contacted mSpy with similar requests. Mass licensing, white labeling, Italian law enforcement and Tasmanian police. While I couldn't find a single instance of an actual sale occurring in any of those email threads, mSpy did at some point tell OSSI that they are working on developing a white label solution and added them to their list of potential partners, meaning it's possible an agreement was eventually made via other channels, no matter if mSpy ever actually sold to governments. Shows their interest in Stalkerware, thus possible other Stalkerware may be used by governments around the world. So so other governments have done it, but let's point at just Israel. You could be governments around the world found trying to purchase Stalkerware. But anyway, of course, government agencies aren't the only ones interested in software that collects a crap ton of data off personal devices. After all, that's what the entirety of modern advertising industry is built upon. Evidenced by emails to mSpy sent by Shafiq Rajani, vice president of Mintel, one of the largest market research companies in the world. By data from it, the ads being shown by Facebook and Snapchat on devices with mSpy installed. A similar request was also made by Placer AI, a local location-based market research company. Let's see. German company Umlaut, now owned by Accenture, tried to buy network coverage information to provide analytics services to telecom providers. Let's see. Sold any data. However, some of them claim to already be working with companies similar to mSpy. So, again, this comes down to everybody's looking for stalkerware and to try and spy on people and gather different information. But the one that we have is we've got Ukraine here, a Ukrainian company that is the center of everything, and every other company is coming to them for stalkerware in various different areas, including U.S. officials. So to blame just one country doesn't seem right. I mean, in this case, we could blame Ukraine for being a provider of stalkerware. That would be something that I could see. So if we look at this here with let's see, politicians, police, Ukraine, United States, Israel, of course, but it's also all over Europe. So it's not just those. Anyway, just a thing. Yes, a lot of governments are interested in it, and especially big companies are interested in this. This is why advertising data and the Cambridge Analytica stuff way back over a decade ago mattered so much, is because it was pertinent data that can help steer political campaigns, advertising, and things like that. Because if you can actually see what people are doing rather than relying purely on web analytics that can be blocked, then you've got so much richer data and people are willing to pay for it, which is why stalkerware is scary. And also with police investigations, it kind of removes the onus of how should I say it? It's almost prove without a reasonable doubt, but it's we have invaded your private space in order to prove without a reasonable doubt that you did do this or that you didn't do this. But then there's also the possibility of, like, we left out this evidence that clearly showed that you're, like, innocent, but we still want to put you in the slammer anyway, which is where it can be really, really scary. If you liked the content, if you enjoyed it, if you think I deserve it, like, comment, subscribe, leave any criticisms you have or what have you. I appreciate it. Feed that algorithm, like I said, and I will see you guys in the next one.